Captain Tom Remmers from the U.S. Coast Guard. I work in the Assistant Commandant for Capabilities Directorate at Coast Guard headquarters down in Washington, D.C. I'm the lead for our Unmanned Systems Initiative. Great to be back here at AFCEA West. We were here last year talking a little bit about unmanned systems and, more importantly, the data that they can collect and what do we need to do from the Coast Guard's perspective to kind of close the information loop. So we talked about our project MINERVA last year publicly for the first time, and we're glad to come back here and talk again about some of the updates we've been doing. My colleague Mike Nasitka, who was with me last year, couldn't make it this week, but I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Captain Christian Hernandez, who's going to be my wingman today. So, Christian.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Captain Christian Hernandez. I'm the Chief of C5I capabilities within the Coast Guard. And just to kind of give everybody an overview on that office, within 761, we are responsible for really understanding the operations and mission support capability needs for the Coast Guard. We develop requirements and kind of champion resource kind of requests and work with our solution providers within the Coast Guard and industry to kind of meet those solutions or meet those needs with solutions. And then past that, we validate that the solutions are continually meeting our capability needs. So there's kind of a circle of life there within the office. And so I'm excited to be part of the Project MINERVA team. I joined the team probably about 5 months ago. And again, I echo, we're excited to be back here at West to kind of, explain kind of what the Project MINERVA effort is for those of you that are not aware of it, but then also understand so that you guys can understand what we've done recently and kind of where we're going in the future here. Okay. So I'll quickly review what Project MINERVA is for those of you that are not aware of it. This is kind of an overview of what the Project MINERVA vision here, and I promise I won't read every slide, but I think it's important to kind of point out a couple things. So really the objective is to pursue and sustain, and it's critical that we say sustain, an operational data ecosystem. And so the concept is we turn data into information into knowledge, and that knowledge then enables data-driven decisions. And I emphasize data-driven decisions. And as you kind of heard this morning, data is a critical piece into everything that we're doing here within Project MINERVA. And kind of in a little bit more of a tactical level, as you kind of see in the image over there, we want to use and capitalize on C4ISR capabilities to kind of build that maritime domain awareness picture. Then that allows us to kind of improve our command and control so that we can then influence the tactical edge. Okay, this is kind of a click-through slide here. So just to kind of go over what our current state is for maritime domain awareness and kind of an OV1, if you will, of what our future state's going to look like. So again, current state, our current assets that we use to support maritime domain awareness consist of kind of an assortment of cutters, aircrafts, shoreside sensors, even space-based sensors, and then I guess more recently, come on in. There we go. They're faster than that in reality. Implementing UAVs from our shore assets to kind of expand our capability. We also partner with a lot of our other agencies to expand our maritime domain awareness. But even as the greatest Coast Guard in the world, we lack the ability to really comprehensively surveil our EEZ and share data between assets, manage data at a very large scale, and then curate that data quickly and efficiently, so that we can make accurate decisions, and then obviously get those decisions back to the tactical edge. So again, we rely heavily, as you can see there, on things like SATCOM, We have very siloed systems still, which we are continually trying to break up to make it more of a data-centric environment of which we work in within our C5I kind of platforms. And we do have a tough time getting information to the tactical edge, again, because of those siloed systems. And you can also see, based on kind of the yellow depiction here, what that's really trying to show is our ability to kind of surveil the waters that we patrol in is limited. We don't have a lot of capability there. And so in a way, we are using yesterday's technology to solve and techniques to solve today's problems, which are everly increasing. And Project Minerva is one way that we are trying to exploit new technology, exploit new capabilities, exploit new governance, right? And also new partnerships so that we can kind of build the Coast Guard that we want for tomorrow. And I'll click through to as I mentioned, kind of a future state. So we want to deploy other assets, unmanned assets, there we go, to kind of expand our ability to surveil. So unmanned assets from shore-based units, surface assets, unmanned boats, we have sail drones, other sensors that we can use to kind of expand the reach of our surveillance capability. And then also partnering and using larger scale UAVs for longer range scanning and surveillance. And then also other things like smart buoys or static sensors that we can deploy. Again, this is very the operational view, that very conceptual at this point, but things that help us drive toward where we're going in the future. So I know these are hard to read, so I will kind of expand on them a little. So kind of to summarize, we want to supplement our manned platforms with unmanned assets to kind of fill those gaps to enable the persistent wide area maritime surveillance that we're looking for. The other block up there kind of expresses our need for use of AI and ML algorithms to kind of enhance our detection capability of targets of interest at a faster rate, and to apply that to the decision makers. We want to employ things like localized networks, right? Manets, 5G, those other type of aspects at the very tactical edge, so that we can move data seamlessly, like high resolution photos, videos, so we can enable our small boats and people that are out there on the water and in the aircraft to make decisions and pass that information a little bit more seamlessly. I'm on 4 there on the bottom. So what that's expressing here is really the data transfer piece, and utilizing kind of user-defined operating pictures or UIs that can be curated to the specific decision makers to make those decisions much easier. Again, using kind of AI to kind of maybe drive that decision to a little bit to more of efficiency, to enhance efficiency, to bring that back to the tactical edge. And that's the last bullet there, is all that information would then be able to seamlessly pass to our operational assets. Tom, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so Project Minerva is taking that desired future state and really trying to integrate all of these types of operational data capabilities together. So they're symbiotic. Each one is focused on the data, and it's not just about fielding a singular system, but rather the integration of those systems. So when I first started thinking about how would the Coast Guard try to take advantage of unmanned systems, I very quickly came up with, well, we could gather a bunch of data with those. That's not that hard. Then what are we going to do? So we devised this little illustration to emphasize the importance of unmanned systems as sensors, but supplementing and complementing what's already out there: manned assets, fixed assets. But then how do we move that data? So what kind of tactical communications and networks solutions do we need to have? What are we going to do with the data? How are we going to manage it, store it, curate it, tag it, so we can actually use it more effectively? And we quickly realized we'd probably overwhelm the small Coast Guard that we are with way too much data that we couldn't even analyze. So we needed to come up with a way to be able to leverage some of these new analytical tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. We'll show you some of the examples that we're experimenting and fielding right now. But then ultimately taking that information and turning it into knowledge for our human operators so they can visualize what's out there and then rely on tasking for machine-to-machine communications and kind of achieve a little bit of what Admiral Paparo was talking about this morning about decision superiority and being able to take a small Coast Guard and use this ecosystem as a force multiplier. So my first job was to kind of encapsulate that into an unmanned systems strategy. And I'm pleased to announce that about a month after we were here at West last year, we published our Unmanned Systems Strategic Plan, signed by our Deputy Commandant of Operations, Vice Admiral Pete Gautier. He's going to be giving a keynote this afternoon, so I'd encourage you to go hear some of his message. But that vision for unmanned systems in the Coast Guard was kind of three-pronged. And we're a multi-mission maritime agency, so it's first, how are we going to use them? How can we employ those types of capabilities to improve our own mission execution? How can we defend against their use against our forces and our missions? And then finally, as a regulatory body, how are we going to define what's safe and legal for the use of unmanned systems in the maritime transportation system, so commercial shipping? So this strategic plan lays out our approach and some goals and objectives across all three of those kind of lines of effort. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that and get a little more familiar with it. We talk about Minerva and this idea of an ecosystem in the strategic plan as well. But the first we'll talk about is kind of the sensors. How can we leverage these types of platforms and sensors to gather the data? So we'll just give a couple of really small examples, most recently of what we've been doing with UAS, UUVs, and then also kind of taking those and merging them together, not just thinking of them as singular systems, but how can we build a more complete picture for our Coast Guard operators. So we'll talk about UAS, the concept of some orthomosaics where we can take imagery. It's pretty basic, kind of standard stuff. I'll talk a little bit about how it's a little more difficult in other environments, but also same thing underwater, and then integrating dual domains, multiple domains of data together. And we'll talk about some use cases. So next slide. This is a quick video of the marina outside of Lahaina on Maui. It starts with some Google map overhead imagery of satellite pre-fire last August. And you'll see as we kind of click through it, this was local imagery taken by one of our UAS that came out. And we could overlay and stitch together an orthomosaic of what it looked like post-fire. So very quickly could give our operators locally back at Honolulu or even back at Pacific Area Command in California, just what did that look like post-fire? And really there's nothing like an image to convey that situation there and kind of improve that situational awareness. We can also do that underwater. We've got some UUV programs. Specifically, this is a program of record where we've got our regional dive lockers, our maritime security and safety teams, as well as some of our maritime security response teams with UUV capabilities with side-scan sonar. And this is just a quick example of what we were able to do at our base in Honolulu, running a quick run along the pier face there where some of our cutters moor. And you can see the resolution there. It's quite good, especially on that right-hand side. If you click one more, we were able to see, hey, that doesn't look normal. What is that? Pretty sure we had a filing cabinet that probably got thrown overboard or somehow found its way over there. But the level of resolution and the imagery you can get here, whether it's a filing cabinet or something else, we can now expand that maritime domain awareness subsurface. And if you go to the next one, this is a video that shows us taking these two types of capabilities and merging them together. So this is just a quick demo we did out at Station Golden Gate in San Francisco, where we planned a mission, flew a UAS, took some imagery of the marina right there around our Station Golden Gate on the Marin County side of the Golden Gate Bridge. Took some imagery, stitched that together, and you can see how we can kind of merge these different types of information feeds together. Local, historic, like Google Maps, and even including electronic charting. So we start with the orthomosaics, quite simple type of an algorithm that stitches these together. It uses terrestrial landmarks to put those together. We can overlay that, again, with Google Maps, electronic charting, and again, merge our own local UAS imagery into that. If that's not enough, and that's not enough awareness for our operators, we can then plan an ROV mission, a UUV mission, and see what it looks like below the surface. So this is a quick demo of some of our folks out there deploying our SRS Fusions. We have about 35 of those around the Coast Guard. The software allows us to plan a mission, quickly and automatically run that mission. And you'll see where we do just a simple run through the harbor here, and get a sense of what's happening below the surface. This is pretty nascent, but that software allows us to take both the aerial imagery and the underwater imagery and stitch that together into a single picture here that you can see. So when and if we need that, this is a kind of a powerful tool, whether it's disaster response, post-storm response, perhaps an oil spill where we've got stuff happening on the surface, but we need to know what's happening below the surface. This is an example of taking that imagery from new sensors and merging that together to give ourselves a better picture. We've also, in the last year, experimented with commercially operated, commercially owned unmanned surface vehicles. So many of you are probably familiar with sail drone. The Navy and a number of other government agencies have been using sail drones. We've had a couple of deployments, one here off of San Diego last spring, and at the same time one in the Caribbean, where we were kind of monitoring cross-border traffic here in around San Diego and supporting migrant interdiction operations down in the Caribbean. So we learned a lot about what that type of platform can generate as far as operational data. We also learned about how do we pull that data and share it with our operators coming from a commercial source. We kind of like this approach. It allows us to be a little more flexible and move a little more quickly, partnering with industry without going through a lot of the timely budget and acquisition hurdles that we have to do if we wanted to acquire that capability and own it ourselves. We're also getting ready to, actually probably this week, another set of sail drones that are going in the water in Key West and going to be supporting migrant operations down in the Caribbean again this spring. So this is an example, and we learned some of these lessons from visiting Task Force 59 out at Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf, and also an ongoing partnership with Fourth Fleet and their hybrid fleet initiative that they've been doing down in the Southcom AOR, really in support of the tri-service maritime strategy and how can we build maritime domain awareness that Admiral Paparo mentioned this morning. So with that, I'll hand it back to Christian, who will talk about some of where we go beyond sensors and networks to how can we leverage that data.
Thanks, Tom. So one thing I want to make sure you guys paid attention to was we do have, and we showed this last time we were here, we have kind of our pizza pie emblem that depicts Minotaur. It's not here. It was in the previous slide, so we'll go back to it. But one of the things that or I guess 5 of the things that image shows is really the initiatives that we have. It kind of organizes how we're going after all the capabilities, governance, everything I kind of mentioned to support Project Minerva. And so sensors is absolutely one of those pizza pies. And this next part I'll talk about is also another one that kind of feeds not just one but multiple areas of the Project Minerva effort. So to truly collaborate with operations, we really have to be able to share data. And so one of the solutions that we have been looking at and working with partners on is sharing data through Minotaur, which you can see there So Minotaur, those of you that are not aware, is a GOTS solution. It's a software system that was developed with the help of Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. Excuse me. And we currently use Minotaur in the Coast Guard with our C-130Js to really provide track data and information down from those assets to a hub that we have on the East Coast over in Pax River. And so we also partner with the Customs and Border Patrol, who also uses Minotaur pretty heavily in their operations to also pull tracks and air data, and we share that in this network. And so, what Minotaur is, it's an ISR sensor control kind of data fusion and visualization tool is kind of the three main parts, and it really does enable us to kind of share information from a hub to hub. So if you speak Minotaur, you're sharing information, and so it's a hub and spoke kind of model, which you kind of see there. It's green, obviously, for controlled and classified, so each aviation asset, surface asset, is essentially a spoke. It shares anything from radar, EOIR, video, AIS information down to the hubs. Those hubs share information seamlessly, and therefore our spoke and our assets are able to kind of reap the benefits of being connected to other partners. And then we can apply other type of geo filtering or whatever you need on top of that overarching platform, to support our specific agency. And so again, as Project Minerva has matured, we've gone down this kind of Minotaur family of systems solution to kind of meet the critical data sharing capability that we need to support Project Minerva. And so, I apologize for that. Let me go back one. So the Coast Guard, CBP, Navy, and Marine Corps have recently chartered a Minotaur Family of Systems Enterprise Governance Board to enable us to not only work with CBP, but other agency partners that are looking at Minotaur as a solution to share data. And essentially it works in a kind of a tenant platform environment. The governance board is to enable us to really collaborate on future developments, jointly seek improvements to the overarching platform, and to kind of build efficiencies that support all agencies. But then it allows the individuals, as I mentioned, the individual agencies to kind of develop their unique features, their unique elements that kind of would ride on top of that overarching platform. And so, so what we're doing now is we're moving forward pretty rapidly for future interagency kind of network architecture for Minotaur to kind of improve our ability to share between all four of the stakeholders. Let's see. So this is a little bit more of a future architecture. I'll turn it over to Tom because he can speak to this a little bit more. But what this really drives at here is some of the efforts that we have in terms of our looking at this from a data perspective, both from a cloud architecture and a on-prem capability, and then also implementing our UI or our UDOPS on top of that. You can see some of the overlay there is our Sextant platform, which we'll talk to in a little bit, but enabling our user, our decision makers and Tactical Edge to visually see Minotaur information in a different way, and in using an ArcGIS platform to kind of overlay layers, which I think many of you are familiar with, that support maybe a regional AOR or specific mission set that folks are working on. Anything to add here, Tom?
Yeah, this kind of encapsulates all the 5 pieces of the ecosystem that we're striving for, or at least I'll say 4, and we'll get to the 5th one here in a second. The fact that we've got a future architecture that we're working with Navy, Marine Corps, and CBP on for all that data sharing, that track sharing that Christian mentioned. We're also giving that visualization capability by allowing us to pull that data into, again, a kind of a state-of-the-market COTS tool with the ArcGIS technology stack in a new platform called Sextant, and a particular common operating picture called Looking Glass. And Christian will show a little bit more about that in a couple slides. The other thing here is the flexibility of the Minotaur and ArcGIS ecosystem there is that we can also pull in other types of data feeds and feature layers. Those of you who are familiar with ArcGIS, we are looking and working with the Navy on how we can pull commercial sources like Saildrone, like smart buoys, like UAV data, pull that in either into Minotaur or into the ArcGIS environment, and again, kind of give that single pane of glass. If you've ever heard the Navy and Task Force 59 talk about the importance of a single pane of glass, taking all of the cognitive load off of some of our human operators and giving them that single picture. This is the ecosystem that we're envisioning through this future Minotaur architecture. So to the next piece, we are also looking at improving Minotaur functionality to integrate some of those advanced analytics. And we start with Minotaur is a very manually intensive system where we've got operators in the back of our planes manually controlling sensors. This first video is showing some new features that are being coded into the Minotaur core code, which allows our operators to say, draw a couple lines or a box and send the camera or the radar to automatically surveil that area. Hands off, it runs through. You can see on the right-hand side, it kind of tracks. Here's what I've looked at. I've got imagery on that brighter area in the image on the right. And it can keep track of where it's looked. And that is all going to be automated now going forward. Next one. The next bit is, well, let's give it a machine learning algorithm that can automatically detect what it sees. And so this is a demonstration in a lab that we're going to be testing in an actual airplane later this month of integrating a government machine learning algorithm to not only automatically search an area, but automatically detect objects and classify them. And so you can see on the upper left-hand corner, it's every time it sees an object, it's going to box it, kind of in traditional ML, computer vision type technology, record lat long, time history, and even chip out an image of what it has seen. And the next slide, we can take that one step further, and we can upload an image of what we want to find through what we call a visual similarity search. So in this case, we have an image of a red buoy that hypothetically we've lost. Hey, go find that red buoy. We can upload an image of it, draw out a pattern, and the aircraft's onboard sensors under Minotaur control will automatically search an area, find it, and notify the user when it has found the object that we're looking for. So this is the type of advanced analytics that when we can, again, integrate it with not only sensors, communication networks, data platforms, and visualization tools, this is the type of return on investment and force multiplier that we're looking for out of Project Minerva. So back to you for Sextant.
Yeah. So as we both kind of mentioned, so Sextant again is if you were looking at the pizza pie, it kind of gets after the visualization goals of Project Minerva. It's built on the Esri's ArcGIS platform. Again, visualization, but it also allows us flexibility to build UIs that maybe one part of our agency needs versus maybe the others based on an AOR. And so Sextant is the overarching platform. Within Sextant, we have a specific cup that's called Looking Glass. Here's kind of an example of what Looking Glass looks like in a with a specific layer on, driving, pulling down some AIS tracks, and then being able to kind of hover over and get some information on specific vessels. So again, those of you that are familiar, we can layer whatever we need within Looking Glass to provide that picture for the operators. Again, working with our joint partners, that expands our capabilities in terms of the information that we have available to us. But I want to also express that Sextant as a whole is really just the platform. So while we have an enterprise tool that maybe all of our sectors within the Coast Guard are using. They can also explore Sextant to say, hey, you know what? I need to build out this type of layer for some type of reporting to provide a decision-making capability for someone that needs to effect a tactical edge mission going on. And so the key importance here is the back end of Sextant. The data is right there available to those who have access to it, right? So we can empower the edges of our organization for what they need, and people who know how to do ArcGIS, which is fairly simple, pull in data, get what they need, and provide that information to the commanders that need to actually make those decisions. So a very powerful tool that we're implementing, and Looking Glass obviously is kind of the enterprise COP that we're looking to implement as well. Which actually we pushed this out. I think it was late last year after West. Okay, yeah, and just to close, so again, this is the pizza pie for those of you guys that kind of missed it initially. The 5 areas there are really the critical high level things that we are focusing on, and you can kind of see on the outside there the sense, make sense, and act, which I think those of you that are familiar with some of the DoD efforts, that aligns fairly well with some of the activities that they have going on in terms of driving at an ecosystem that aligns all agencies to kind of one unified operational. I guess I don't know what we call it now, but unified command and control. So what we're looking for, so this what you have up here is really the 7 rights, right? So this is another guiding way of looking at of Minerva. We want to provide these 7 rights and get these 7 rights so that we can perform operations. What we need from industry, right? What we're constantly looking at from industry is we need affordable, right? Cyber secure, effective technologies that are really data driven. That are also agnostic to the data that's back ends that we're providing, kind of that platform, the platforms that we have, be able to work with front end sensors, again, data kind of agnostic to where the data comes from, enabling us to, enhancing kind of our unmanned activities so we can expand our maritime domain awareness pictures and our ability to persistently surveil our maritime domain. And what I would say is 100% surveillance of our EEZ 100% of the time is something that we are aiming for. So that's something else that I think we should consider when we're going through with Project Minerva. Those are the kind of the criteria that we're looking at when we're moving forward. Tom, anything else to add?
No, I think when we think about at a very high level, if what we're after with Minerva, it's if we can deliver these 7 rights, it's the right information to the right folks when they need it, via the channels that they need it, at whatever classification level, and that's very nebulous, but that's our very high level aspirational goal with Project Minerva, and we're gonna keep at it. I think as Admiral Paparo mentioned, we're never gonna be satisfied. We're gonna keep aiming and progressing towards that very high aspirational goal. So, I guess thanks. If you have any questions, please come up to the microphone. This is being recorded, so we want to be able to make sure all the questions can be heard as well.
You get your UAV stuff.
It'll automatically track through that.
Good afternoon, or good morning, Captain Remmers, Captain
Renee's.
Lieutenant Clark from Sector San Diego, Intel Chief. I did have a couple questions on both Minerva and Sextant as well. So now that we've seen what it will look like, do we know how long it will take to become fully operational? And should we expect a large-scale technology overhaul in our command centers, fusion centers, cutters, as it's rolled out?
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you talking rollout of Sextant or a rollout of Project Minerva?
Rollout of Project Minerva.
I'll take that. Minerva is not a set of capabilities. It's sort of this aspirational goal. We already have a lot of those capabilities out there. Minerva is focusing on connecting them. So instead of looking at 5 different screens from some of these stovepipe systems, it's really about connecting them. So we're working to develop what would be basically a technology roadmap that will kind of lay out what that's going to look like. As we go down that road, we're going to expand capabilities. So I think more UAS, more USVs, more shoreside sensors, specifically in the San Diego AOR here, is going to be important to kind of give you guys the maritime domain awareness that you need to conduct Coast Guard missions. The data side will come, and I don't think we're ever going to be. I'm not sure we're going to be done. But we're going to work to continually integrate those. And I think as technology moves, it's never going to be a static end state. It's probably going to be evolutionary. And with obsolescence in the technology space these days, we're going to constantly be working to make sure that that's sustainable.
Yeah, what I would add is Project Minerva is not. It's not a one solution. It's not a one thing. It's kind of again. I put this up only because it's guidance to how do we get to this, how do we bring everything together, how do we have everything communicate, what's our vision, which way do we go forward. So that's what Project Minerva is really aimed to do. It provides the governance behind a lot of that activity. What else you got?
Thank you. Regarding Sextant, it's my understanding that it's kind of a replacement for CG1 View. Is that correct? What are some of the capabilities that will be gained, and what are some of the capabilities that will be lost? And is there any blending of current efforts with Project Bear Trap at District 11?
So yes, it is replacing CG1 View. That's what it was pushed out. So we are now deprecating CG1 View, and Sextant is the replacement for it. So all capabilities that CG1 View provided within that platform, Sextant provides that, and it's much more modern, provides much more capability to the users for using an ArcGIS kind of type of platform. I think the critical piece about Sextant that I want to drive at is the ozone widget framework that CG1 View was built off of. It was very limiting in terms of what a sector or users could do. And so you may have a sector on the West Coast versus a sector on the East Coast, have completely different mission sets, completely different AORs, and they need to generate GIS products to their decision makers that are completely different. And so the Sextant platform enables you to do that. Looking Glass is really the CG1 View piece of that. So when you say CG1 View, so Sextant isn't technically replacing CG1 View. Looking Glass is really taking that over. And Bear Trap, I'm not entirely familiar.
I'll take that. Yeah, so Bear Trap is a good example of a local initiative targeted at improving MDA for a specific sector, in this case, Sector San Diego. I think the benefit of Minerva is we're going to take things like that and make sure that it's integratable into the larger picture, and it's not just another screen, that someone in the command center or the Jayhawk needs to look at, but rather it becomes part of a picture that reduces the cognitive load on our operators and our decision makers. So. But I think that the challenge is understanding what all of those local initiatives are and kind of wrangling them together so that they can be integrated. One of the things we didn't really mention, but we're very much pursuing like an open source architecture, like a modular open source architecture, so that these types of capabilities can roll in, roll out as obsolescence, makes them no longer feasible, or when the new shiny object comes up and says, we really need that, an open source architecture is something that we're going to be able to leverage more easily.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for the question.
I'm Mark Adams from Paraton. I was wondering, have you started looking at some other than sensing, something like open source analysis type of activities where you can use sort of open information, news articles, other things, with things like large language models and other things to actually inform some of the other things you might be seeing out in the environment?
Couple responses to that. First off, our intelligence community, our CG2, is a part of the core team of Minerva, and so absolutely they're also the executive agent for the Department of Homeland Security when it comes to maritime domain awareness. So they represent the entire department at a interagency MDA working group. So that's kind of their avenue, and they are working on, and they are building large language models now in conjunction with the intelligence community to better understand that and leverage that type of information. They are also kind of setting the policy of how we go after some of this. So Christian and I are more in the capabilities. How can we define what those capability needs are? But CG2, our intel folks, are going to kind of define what that policy is. So,
Okay, good, thank you.
yep.
Aloha, Mal Yokoyama, former commanding officer of Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific. So very, very passionate about what you're doing. The question I have is data. So one of the challenges that, at least across the Navy, was you have tons of data, but they're all in different formats. So, for when it comes to Minotaur, is there a standard data structure you're looking for so industry can respond? Thanks.
You wanna take it? Yeah, go ahead.
I think, thank you for your question, and concur. That is something that we are actively pursuing as well. From the Project Minerva standpoint, governance of that is something we're constantly talking about. Data standards, how, when we're talking about fusion of information, again, like I mentioned initially, we have a lot of technology that's already out there. We're trying to expand that by deploying unmanned and other assets. But we have a lot of information out there that are just simply siloed. And once we start to kind of break those silos down, look at overarching like data platforms and kind of the data science behind that, we're going to break those down. So now you have so much data available. What's the governing structure behind kind of the C2 operational data ecosystem that Project Minerva is trying to implement? That is what Project Minerva will work toward in terms of governing and data standards. We have data folks within the Coast Guard that we align with, that are part of our team as well, that will help to define that. And absolutely, we need industry to be data agnostic. We need industry to be able to provide solutions that can work with how we work with data, and certainly whatever standards or formats or anything to that extent, whatever we can share. Certainly, that's something that we're going to be very open with for whatever we can do. But I stress that, and to the gentleman's question previously, bringing in other like outside features, local sensors, all those type of things for, we have sectors now that I get on a routine basis saying, hey, we have local partners, local state, or even we have a person that has radars that they have on their houses that are actually pretty good, that provide coverage to blind spots. How do we integrate all that stuff? Can we? And so that is taking that information to kind of open or expand our surveillance picture is something that we're very interested in. So,
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
yeah.
I'll add a couple things to that. We are also a member of the CJAD C2 cross-functional team. So from the Coast Guard's perspective, we represent to that. And we are partnering with the Navy on Project Overmatch as well. So we are not looking to duplicate or do anything on our own that's going to conflict with some of those data structures. Very much want to leverage what DoD is working on so that, again, as part of the Tri-Surface Maritime Strategy, we are interoperable and interchangeable with some of those other naval partners.
Good morning, captains. My name is Biagio Clemente, Dr. Clemente from SMT, Colorado. I'm the ATS contract manager for Space Force. So we're looking obviously at automation and integration data, right? So my question is, where the majority of this data reside? Besides Minotaur basically is the one, and it comes in my mind first. And where those data, the majority of this data is coming from terrestrial, above sea, undersea, or space or air. And the last question I have is, what are your expectations and the timelines regarding these 7 key points?
I'll start with when we talk about Minotaur, this is the data is coming from those spokes, so aircraft and their sensors on board. We're moving into the surface fleet, so putting Minotaur and integrating their sensors as well, and then also looking to be able to integrate shoreside sensors as well. So it's mostly, radar, EO, IR, AIS, those types of basically situational awareness track types of data. That data, those two hubs that we talked about, there's one, a Coast Guard hub, and then a CBP hub. Those are out there. I don't think I'll say exactly where they are right now, but those are sitting on hardware right now. We're looking to kind of modernize that architecture, bring that into an in-house data storage, and then also replicate it. I didn't really talk about it on that one slide, but for long-term storage, lean on cloud storage for whatever data we need to keep for long-term pattern of life. But we would have an on-prem data warehouse for day-to-day operations, probably on the order of several weeks. That all else fails, we've got our own in-house on-prem data storage for some of that Minotaur data. There's a lot of other data that is out there that resides in various places. And in fact, I would encourage you to look up Captain Pat Thompson and Commander John White. I see you back there, John. They're talking later today about sort of the...
Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry, tomorrow it is. I'll catch up. Tomorrow about some of the data modernization efforts within the Coast Guard as well. How are we building kind of our data mesh, data fabric? I'm not sure what we're calling it these days, mesh or fabric, John? Both? Okay. I'm not too far off.
Mesh fabric.
But as for timelines, they're in a much better position to kind of talk to that. But as far as commercial space and Space Force type of data feeds, we very much want this to be interoperable with those types of feeds as well. Things like Hawkeye 360 and all the commercial providers out there in the LEO space. We want to be able to integrate that where it makes sense and where it enriches our own situational awareness picture. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Pat Bidigary. I've got a small business, Synoptic Engineering. Most of our work at this point has been contract R&D, but we have aspirations to get into commercial space. And from your standpoint, is the Coast Guard, as the inputs to Minerva, are you looking at buying sensor data, or you talked about shoreside sensors, buying sensors that would then generate the data?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes to both.
I think when it makes sense and there's a sensor already there, and again, another thing I don't think we mentioned earlier is there are lots of state and local port partners, commercial partners. There's the Palm Beach Sheriff that has a radar down off Palm Beach. We want to be able to integrate that feed. The Lafayette Fire Department up in the Bay Area has got a camera on top of one of the high mountains in there. Gives us great visualization of the northern San Francisco Bay. We want to be able to integrate those types of sensors as well. So state and local government partners, commercial partners, or if there's a gap out there that we need to fill, we're willing to go out and acquire and own our own sensor if that's the case. But whatever, basically, as Christian said, when we have this surveillance and detection capability need for the exclusive economic zone of the nation, basically the coast out to 200 miles, that's a tremendous amount of water to be able to monitor and have awareness of. So any and all ways we can close that gap is what we're after.
Thank you.
Sure.
Gentlemen, good morning. Nick Kristoff, Systematic Inc. Thank you very much for a very informative brief this morning. I really enjoyed it. Captain Hernandez, you said that, Minerva is not a solution to deliver the 7 rights, but it's more of a governance structure to help the Coast Guard figure out how to deliver those 7 rights. What would you say if I or some other industry out here, some other company out here said, I have a solution that will give you those 7 rights right now?
Interested.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it, right? I think this is the beauty behind West is absolutely. We have, this is, again, I want to quote Captain members here, it is a little bit nebulous when we start to talk about these things. We have we have our internal hurdles that we need to make sure that we align with. We have cybersecurity, all the things that you need to think about when you're implementing solutions within our space. Those are all things that we need to consider. But we are absolutely interested to what is available, to what can enhance our ability to provide the C2 data ecosystem, bring in fused data, even governance opportunities. We're not the only people doing this. How does industry doing governance for these type of things? These are the type of things that we're all interested in. Again, Project Minerva isn't just about, certainly there's a heavy focus on the solutions, the sensors, the capabilities that are going to bring that information in, but then it's how are we managing this, right, from an organization perspective? Those are the things that it's kind of all the above. So yeah, we're interested to hear what folks have that can meet those and deliver kind of everything that we have out there to our operations. So,
Thank you very much.
I'll add that, again, open source is something we're after. We don't want to be locked into a particular vendor. And something we've talked about that I don't think we've actually stated today is the Coast Guard is a small agency with a small budget, so maintaining affordability is really crucial to this as well. So we're going to think about how we can tackle that in kind of new ways and innovative ways, unlike our DoD partners downstairs. So
yeah, and that's one thing I do want to emphasize, and I had mentioned it earlier in terms of what we're looking for from industry. Affordability and sustainability are critical to what we have, to any solution that we put in to the service. And so you have to keep that in mind. That's why open source is an important thing for us. We can't, vendor lock is challenging for organizations that maybe don't have the big dollars like DoD. So something to keep in mind as you interact and provide solutions or work within your solution spaces is affordability, cybersecurity, obviously, and sustainability are things that we need to consider. Sir.
Great presentation, gentlemen. So looking at the goals and getting to this, I'd like to pull on that thread of data mesh and data fabric. And as the gentleman here talked about data interoperability, and everyone historically has talked about, let's have this common data architecture. Well, I can tell you it'll never happen, and the first thing someone's going to do when they come up with a new sensor is I don't want to pad it so it'll work with someone else's sensor. Data mesh, data fabric allows you to leave the data in its authoritative system. It does what it needs to do. It eliminates the timeliness of data problems. It gets rid of that data warehouse. What are you guys thinking about doing in that area? Also helps you with affordability, interoperability, and time to mission, because everyone can build their apps to do their thing, and then you just pull together the data however you want in the moment.
So I'll start and leave you with, we are absolutely considering and working on everything that you just said. And the people in the back of the room are the people that are working on it for you. Commander John White and Captain Pat Thompson will be leading a discussion about how we are doing that within the Coast Guard tomorrow. So, but to your comments and question, we are actively aware of that. It's something that I think is really a game changer for us. Absolutely keeps costs down, keeps interoperability right at the forefront. We can make things work so long as we can get our data mesh, data fabric, our environment all kind of put together, which is absolutely what we're working on. It's a high priority for us.
Great, thank you.
Captains, thanks again. It's great to see the progress you made in the last year from your presentation at West 2023. Just on that last comment there, in terms of the data integration piece, how are you going to leverage Coast Guard Software Factory that you're just standing up for that? Because I think there's real potential from that to pull that data through an integration pipeline and then push it out to a production environment. And then last question, which of these 7 rights is the hardest for you? And
oh boy, that's a
you want to take the software factory
question.
That's more
yes, sir. So yeah, Software Factory is something that we are 100% going to leverage. We are, for those of you that are not aware, we are working hard to get our Software Factory established within the Coast Guard to enable us to kind of move more agilely and push those type of software and application developments into different environments and get them out quickly to our field users. So that is something we are actively moving towards. It plays absolutely directly into our efforts with Project Minerva as we kind of develop solutions and need solutions developed through our software factory and working with our data management and how we're going to organize data. Project Minerva is really it's going to drive kind of the governance on how we go about getting solutions, is what I would say. It's one aspect of how we're going to go about Project Minerva, how we go after solutions. So internally, we'll be utilizing the software factory as much as we can to develop whatever those areas that we need that are specific and applicable to the software factory. You want to address the?
Yeah, which one of the 7 rights is the hardest? That's a good question, and leave it to Joe to ask the hard question for the morning. I would say right now the route is very challenging for us. You know, when we're out, we are a long way. We're outside of cell coverage most of the time. A lot of our commercial SATCOM on our cutters is limited bandwidth. We're working on that. We've done some great things, putting Starlink on many of our major cutters, but it's not all of them, and it doesn't include boats, and it doesn't always include aircraft, and it doesn't include cutter-based assets like UAS and that kind of thing. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done right now on getting the right route in place. So the mesh network that we alluded to earlier, we're doing some experimentation down in South Florida right now to test in an operational setting. What does that look like if we've got a mesh radio providing aerial ISR down to surface assets, for example, and a more complete picture for our cutter COs or our folks in CIC. But I think the great thing about Minerva is it's going to allow us to say when we tackle the route, then we can work on classification, like making sure that we get the right data, in particular, down to the right classification for most of our law enforcement and Coast Guard missions are at unclass. So how do we pull in what may come from another source and get it down to the classification? So Minerva, we envision, is going to give us the agility to maneuver around each one of those rights and tackle the next hardest problem.
I think to add on to that, I think we primarily utilize, as I mentioned in kind of the OV discussions, our SATCOM capability to move data, and with PLEO and those capabilities now available to us, it is a game changer, as many of you know, for certainly us, but also our DoD partners. But it is the only. You take that away, and data transport. What does that look like? So, when we go through our PACE kind of discussions, those are some of the things that I think we need to consider in terms of how we move data. So to Captain Ramos' point, I think that is a very challenging area. Not one pizza pie really, but I think one thing that I think is very challenging for this is how are we going to govern this whole thing? How do we bring it all together? We can sensors. There's challenges there. Certainly, there's fiscal challenges, there's technology challenges, there's readiness levels, ensuring that our AI and ML that we want to apply, the sensors that we are going to deploy to use those are a right match. You're not going to push out heavy AI ML type algorithms, and you're going to use very low capable optical or unmanned assets. It just doesn't make sense, right? So being able to kind of make those levels line up at the cost that we can afford, those are challenges. But then how do we bring it all together from a governance structure? And so those of you that are familiar with the JADC2 kind of concept, I know DoD is that's a challenge. And a much bigger challenge is how do we bring all agencies together? Similarly, is we have our own stovepipes. Is how do we govern and bring all that together from an organizational perspective? I think the data mesh, the data fabric, as you kind of alluded, opens up the opportunities to say, hey, we do have siloed things, but we can still make it work. And so that helps in the data environment. But I think certainly how we bring transport is a concern. But I think governance overall is something that we're constantly discussing within the Project Minerva work. Anybody else? Okay.
2 minutes left to go. Can we go out with some AC/DC maybe, guys, in the back? No, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be back here.